Let's keep going on your list of principles for artists' role in time of war.
Well, another thing that we need to do is we need to expose the media's role in the lies that are told, in order to keep the military-industrial complex humming.
Mm-hmm. Fairness.
For instance,
Go ahead.
Well, for instance, scapegoating immigrants. We need to speak out early and often about the direct, overt racism and the hidden racism that enters into this kind of scapegoating and saying, oh, yeah, the Mexicans are taking all our jobs. Well, we actually sent the jobs out of the country in the first place.
Exactly. When this May 1st happens, there's going to be yet another immigrant march, which is going to be a big one, supposedly. And someone this week on TV addressed a comment to, what's his name, Dobbs, who's kind of fixated on the immigration thing, said, don't you know no one cares about that anymore? And it'll be interesting to see what the reaction is to a larger than ever immigration march on May Day, which is promised. I don't know if it could get any larger than what we had here in Chicago about 3 years ago.
Well, I challenge everyone to put, as I have, in my front yard, a sign that says, welcome immigrants, bienvenidos inmigrantes. And on the other side it says it in Hmong, but I can't pronounce that part.
I remember the poster that we had of a Native American chief saying, who's calling who immigrant, who's calling who illegal pilgrim, or something like that. All right, sorry, I digressed. So
okay, so that's just media. One way that the media lies. Another is, there's the corporate control of media. I mean, you talked about Rachel Maddow earlier, but basically, I've heard the phrase is getting common now, stenographers to power. The media goes to the press conference, it copies down what they say, and then it reports it as the truth. And as the newspapers begin to fold, due to these economic times and who knows what other reasons, there's less and less reporting.
And yet there's more and more information out when you take into account the internet. Someone pointed out this morning on BEZ, I think it was Daniel Shore was pointing out that in the presidential press conference this week, he called on not one of the major old gray ladies of newsprint. He called on Ebony, he called on Politico.com, he called on a number of local outlets, but none of the huge. I didn't realize that until he said that, which means to me that we've got a president who not only actually answers questions intelligently and, to some depth, in other words, allowing for not only the questioner but also his audience as thinking human beings.
No doubt he's articulate.
And we haven't had that in a long time. We haven't had that in a really long time.
A really long time.
Maybe ever, in that form.
But the other thing you got to remember is there's still a lot of people in this country that don't have internet access.
Yes.
And there's still a lot of people in this country who use the internet to play games.
Sure, and that's okay.
If you want to get your news on the internet, you have to look for it.
Yeah.
But if you want to get your news from Fox, all you got to do is turn on the television.
And then you still don't get the news.
Well, that's right.
Sorry. And that's my opinion. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, that's one reason that artists need to expose this kind of stuff, these lies.
Well, then there's
the censorship part.
Yeah, towards that end, the fairness and accuracy in reporting, folks, FAIR. If you go on their website, every Friday they do the sort of roundup of the best of the week. And one of them this week was how it was reported that the win of in El Salvador last week of a leftist, a person who is part of the NFL, not the National Football League, FLP. Anyway, the left group in
Yeah,
El
those guys.
Salvador that we were paying millions of dollars in the 80s to beat, that there was a twist on the news that said, see, proof that what we did was useful. And an incredible twist. And to do it justice, you should read Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting website on how they reported the Salvador thing. Anyway, again, I digress.
And then another thing that artists, another responsibility of artists in time of war is to propose solutions.
Yay! Solutions!
Yeah, it's not all,
Gloom and doom?
gloom and doom. It's not all gloom and doom. It's not all about attacking the bad guys, so-called.
Mm-hmm.
We can propose solutions such as internationalism. That's part of the welcoming immigrants part.
Yes.
It's part of just exposing people to and letting people know about what is happening in other countries. There are some prints here on the wall that celebrate some successful struggles, ongoing struggles, such as this little suite of etchings here.
Is that the ones with the red circles on them?
No.
The
etchings are the ones
etchings.
that. Yeah.
Yes.
Little suite of etchings here. One of them is about the Brazilian landless workers movement.
Mm-hmm.
Another is about the protest at the World Trade Organization meeting in Miami.
Mm-hmm.
There's another about the Atenco struggle in Mexico City. And finally, there's one called Takeover. This is about when the workers at the Bruckmann garment factory in Buenos Aires, upon learning that the owner was going to shut the business down and ship all the machinery to China, they just took over the plant. And they were the inspirations for those electrical workers here in Chicago who took over their plant.
Republic Windows workers.
Yeah. Oh, IBEW, right?
No, it was UE, actually.
Oh, UE, okay.
Yeah. IBEW is not quite that left. Speaking as a daughter of an IBEW worker.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
At any rate, yeah, there are these successful struggles going on, and artists need to help bring attention to those and support them.
Yeah. You did a lot of shows on, you did a lot of woodcuts, were they? Or I don't know the right artistic label for the Oaxaca series that you did some years
Those were
back.
woodcuts. Those were woodcuts. And actually, I didn't do those. When I visited Oaxaca, I was there during the last days of APO, which was a coalition of organizations in Oaxaca who actually succeeded in more or less taking over the entire city.
Yeah.
And, there were no uniformed police seen around that city for weeks because they were universally hated. Well, maybe not universally, but they were very much disliked when they tried to break up the planton of the teachers' union, which was striking at the time. And they had a huge encampment in Oaxaca, and the police attacked them in the early hours of the morning, and then the teachers and their supporters fought back, drove the police away.
Set up barricades.
And there were barricades all over the city. And then out of that, the artists of Oaxaca, some of them formed a group called Asaro, which was a Assembly of Revolutionary Artists of Oaxaca, and they started making woodcuts. Now, woodcuts are they would like the first prints,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you go back in art history, they're so easy. You got a piece of wood, you got some ink, you got some paper, you got a knife, you can make it. So
you make it sound easy, but I've seen you working on this one that you're finishing before you hang it this afternoon.
Yeah, well, I'm always reaching for a little bit
deeper,
a little bit more than I did the last time, and man, it's hard. But at any rate, this was a great example of artists supporting a struggle, and doing all these things that I talked about, that I've been talking about. They were fulfilling their responsibilities. I was really energized by those guys. They were mostly young. There was a couple of older people who were doing the teaching and organizing and finding the space to print and finding the press and everything. But I was so energized that I went back again a year later, and I asked them if I could make a print with them, and I did. And that was really a lot of fun.
That's thrilling that you made that international connection the way you did.